We have this relatively new feast or memorial in honor of Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos, uh, name that's kind of familiar to us here in this area. Uh, the Seelos Academy is the school at what was formerly St. Alphonsus Church, right there in Wexford. They have all those um, signs and banners along the road talking about Blessed Seelos. Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos came from Bavaria. The Kingdom of Bavaria was ordained to the Redemptorist order around 1845. Only 2 years after this diocese was established. And he, along with St. John Neumann, of course, we have another parish, St. John Neumann Parish here in Franklin Park, both Germans, both missionaries that came here to help those immigrants who came to these United States back in the 1800s. He was a priest at St. Philomena Parish in Pittsburgh, but he was also one of those circuit rider priests. We hear about them on their horse and going from place to place. Not only did he come to Pennsylvania, but he also was a missionary in Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, Illinois. He also went to New Orleans, to Louisiana. They say that, and if you look him up, I did that last night and then early this morning, just kind of reading up a little bit on Blessed Seelos. He's kind of a handsome guy, tall, thin, very well-mannered, and he had a love for God and a love for his people that attracted people to him. Children loved to hear him as he preached and taught them their catechism. He was also a wonderful confessor and a great spiritual director, something that we all long for, huh? And when I was looking at the readings today, the readings for the day, of course, I couldn't help but think about Blessed Seelos. Huh? St. Paul speaks about, I'm amazed at how quickly we've forsaken the one. And he's telling them, get back to what I preach. There is no other gospel than the gospel of Christ Jesus. And that's what Blessed Seelos proclaimed and preached, not only by his words, but by his example, his selfless service to Christ and his church. He was a candidate to become the Bishop of Pittsburgh in 1860, but he would rather be a missionary priest, traveling, did that. So he was passed over so that he could go finally to Louisiana. And in 1867, Francis Xavier Seelos succumbed to yellow fever in New Orleans after ministering to so many people who had suffered this disease. Sound familiar? That pandemic or epidemic went through the town, killing so many people, but there he was to help them. So he was there for the people, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So we remember Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos today. As I was reflecting on the gospel passage, and it's one that we are very familiar with the lawyer asking Jesus, trying to trip him up, really, is what's going on here. Yeah. So he wanted to justify himself. So he says, and who is my neighbor? And so we hear that story about the Good Samaritan. It can help us think of Francis Seelos as well. Good Samaritan, someone there to help people in need. We know about the priest. Of course, there was a Jewish priest. And so he wanted to stay away from him because if the guy would die, he would be contaminated. He wouldn't be able to minister. So he goes on the other side. What's the point of your ministry if you can't help people in need, right? But that's what happened. Same way with the Levite. But it was a Samaritan, one who was, quote unquote, a foreigner, kind of like Francis Seelos, a foreigner in this country. He comes upon the sight. He sees this man who has been stripped and beaten half to death. And he has compassion. That's a beautiful word for us. That's the kind of spirit that Francis Seelos had too. Compassion. And so the Good Samaritan helps this man, hoists him on his own beast, and even pays 2 silver coins for his care as he leaves. That's someone who really loves God by loving his neighbor. And Francis Seelos is a good example to us all. I read a story. It's in a book that I've turned to many, many times over the course of my 30 years. And the story goes, it's a little different take on the Pharisee that came to Jesus asking, "And who is my neighbor?" In that story, Jesus gives him the same story that the parable that you and I heard about the Good Samaritan who helped the man. What makes the difference in this story, however, was the fact that the lawyer was the victim to the robbers on his way to Jericho. It was he himself. And when Jesus, knowing this, of course, because he was the Son of God, when he tells the story, the lawyer knows he's talking about him. And he knows how he's supposed to treat the people around him, the same way that he was treated by the Good Samaritan. May you and I learn that lesson, in not only the story about the Good Samaritan, but the good example and the intercession of Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos, whom we honor today. And together, we may be brothers and sisters for each other, good neighbors, helping one another each and every day of our lives.